Everybody ready? Good to go? We've got a quorum?
Do not without Kat Tucker from Gilroy for the governing board. We do have a quorum.
Okay, for implementation board. Yeah, Joe's with implementation. Can we just go ahead and do implementation board?
Here, we have the joint first, the joint
But if
meeting.
Kat's not here.
Right now.
Oh, good,
in.
okay.
Everybody take a deep sigh of relief and just,
All right, now we have a quorum. No worries at all. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. We will now begin the Joint Governing and Implementation Board meeting. We've got a call to order, so this meeting is called to order. And Michelle, if you can lead us in a roll call.
Sure. Chair Wasserman,
Here.
Vice Chair Lazat, board members Panikal,
here.
Kalman, here. Spring,
Here.
Tucker, here. Rocha,
Here.
Simidian,
Here.
and Diep.
Present.
Thank you. We will move on to our report from Mr. Walt Glines, the chair of our PAC, our Public Advisory Commission. And
9.
no Walt. All righty, we may come back to Walt if he comes in. We'll now turn to public comment. Anyone here wishing to speak about anything not on today's agenda? And just to give me a heads up, is anybody here to speak on anything on today's agenda? No, all right. So just for the record, I'm not going to ask that each time, Valerie. And if somebody walks in, we'll ask if they want to speak on something, but otherwise we'll consider no one here for public comment. We now move on to item number 1. 1 and 2, which are consent agenda items. So moved. Move to approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Committee and I.
Item
Hereby.
2 are passed. We now move on to regular business. Item number 3 is the 5-year periodic fee assessment review. Edmund, take it away.
Yes, and we have, this is a requirement of the plan, and I thought it'd be a good idea to have our consultants, our economists, come before the joint board to explain the process. And we have Bob Spencer from Urban Economics, and Sally Nielsen's on the phone if there's any questions that are specific to the work she's doing with this 5-year review. So I'll have Bob come up and start his presentation.
Thank you. Welcome, Bob.
Okay, thanks very much. Great to be here, and to be here with my colleague Sally Nielsen on the phone. We have a short presentation. Thank you for any there it is. Nope, other one. Nope, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
5-year.
it was. I saw it right in the middle of the screen there. There it is. Yeah. Okay. And I assume the cursor keys will help me move through this. So, as Edmund said, requirement of the plan, every 5 years, go back, take a look at what's going on, and update the funding plan and the development fees. So, the basic process is to look at the cost side of the equation. That's the work that my colleague Sally Nielsen will be doing, updating what's called the cost model for this 50-year effort. And then those costs will go into the funding plan. It'll be my role to update the funding plan, including the development impact fees, and then that all will be documented in a final report. We have meetings scheduled. We've already met with the TAC once. This is our first meeting with the board. And so you all will be intimately involved in the rollout of this, and we'll keep you informed as we go. Sally and I bring a lot of experience to this. We've worked on a number of plans to date, going back to the San Joaquin plan in the 90s. We have been doing the 5-year updates for the East Contra Costa plan, which is the first plan to require these updates. So we've done 2 updates there. We've also recently prepared the funding cost model and funding plans for Yolo County. The Placer County plan, if it weren't for the federal shutdown, actually might be on the street now, the draft report, so we're eagerly awaiting the release of that. So we do bring I think a fair bit of experience will be helpful in this regard. On the cost side, the cost model side that Sally will be working on, of course, land acquisition costs are a major factor. So we'll be going through all the land acquisition costs to date, looking at location, size, and then calibrating the estimates going forward based on where future land acquisitions will need to be, location, size, et cetera. So that'll be a big part. But we'll also be looking at another major piece, for example, for the wetland fees, what's been the cost of restoration, and do we need to update that? And then all the way down through management, monitoring, program administration costs. We'll be collecting all that actual data through the end of last fiscal year and using that to help calibrate the remaining 45 years of the permit term. Those cost model outputs will then go into a funding model that I'll be using to, basically it's to drive the nexus analysis to the fees, but as well as to capture all the other funding that goes into this plan, update those other sources, local sources, foundation, Santa Clara Parks, et cetera. We'll be updating all of that along with the nexus analysis, updating the development fees, and producing a final report. Just to remind you of the fee structure, there are 3 zones that all pay a land cover fee, zones A, B, and C at various levels. All development in the county pays a fairly small nitrogen deposition fee. The main fee is the land cover fee in those zones. And then if you affect certain sensitive resources, serpentine, burrowing owl, or wetlands, you pay an additional fee on top of that. So these are the fees that we are going to be updating and calibrating based on actual cost to date. The amount that the fees will fund of the plan is driven by the original nexus analysis, and these fair shares will remain constant through the 50-year permit term. So, for example, the land cover fee is designed to pay 57% of total costs. So as those total costs go up and down, that land fee gets adjusted commensurately based on the fair share analysis in the Nexus study. And I'm here to answer any questions or comments as we're just kicking this off now. Thank you very much.
Bob. Any questions or comments? Easy start. Thank you.
Anybody on the phone?
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Director Smidian or Councilmember Dieppe, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you. No questions, this is Director Simidian, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the recommended action is just barely an action, review presentation. I think we can consider the presentation reviewed. And Valerie, you're saying no votes necessary on that? Okay. We'll move on to item number 4, which is report from the executive officer. Edmund?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So some of this is a repeat from the implementation board meeting that was held in November, and I apologize to implementation board members for that. But the last time we had a governing board meeting was in June. So there are some new people also that were not part of any of our boards back then. So I thought it'd be a good idea just to go over some of this stuff. The first item is the mid-year budget review, which is a new item. And you can see where we are in terms of revenues that were projected, and as of some revenues we've gotten at the end of last quarter, so as of December 31st, we're at $3,239,410. And our projected revenues for this year from fees were estimated to be $5 million. So we're on a good pace to meet and possibly exceed revenues from fees for this fiscal year. For grant allocations, it's over $1.8 million that we've gotten so far to date. 1.5 has come from the Water District, and the balance has come from grants from the state of California. I'll be talking a little bit about the grant breakdown later in the EO report. We projected $4 million, and a lot of it's being driven by whether we acquire a property in this fiscal year or not. We're in negotiations with several landowners now. And some of the monies we get are kind of based on whether we acquire these properties, whether we get money from the Moore Foundation, or we could get some additional money from the Water District through their D3 program. For expenses, you can see where we're at to date. The majority of it was in the conservation strategy implementation, which was the San Felipe Creek Restoration Project in Grant Park, which was successfully completed last fall. So currently we're at $2,247,000 and change, and our projected expenses were almost $4.7 million. So the remaining balance is just a little over $2.4 billion for the balance of the year. Any questions on the mid-year budget?
Oh, that's nice.
So
Any
from,
questions? And from our two members that are teleconferencing in, any questions so far?
I had a
So
small,
far, so good.
Thank you, Minox.
I have a small question. It's regarding the 4.1 million. That's a fairly good size figure. So are we saying that that money from Moore Foundation is contingent on land acquisition?
so it would be 4.1 from all sources. If we, and we're really close to wrapping up our negotiations with the UTC Corporation for another 1,500 acres of their land, and there would be some more foundation money that would go towards that. We're in discussions with another landowner off of 152 that we're going to meet with the Moore Foundation in the next couple weeks to see if they'd like to help fund that acquisition. So if those acquisitions happen this fiscal year, we might be getting $1 to $2 million from the Moore Foundation. There's a project that OSA is working on. I can't get into details on it, but it's a high priority site for us. It would be an important acquisition for the Anderson Dam mitigation for the Water District. So some of those Water District funds above the $1 million that we would get this year from the Water District, given the importance of the property. So we have some room there to make up, to get over that almost $2.3 million. But that's the cumulative total of all grant sources.
Thank you.
So on endowment investment, we made our first investment. So our endowment right now, the amount of money we collected for the endowment, which is 10.35% of the fees, percentage of the fees that we collect on projects. We made our first investment of $1.1 million to the Silicon Valley Community Foundation into their social responsibility fund. We've collected more than that. Almost $3 million to date on endowment, but given the volatility of the stock market, I was a little reluctant to put all the $3 million in there right now. And just to let you know, to give you some assurances, so it's currently in the LAIF fund. That's a local government investment, as probably a lot of you know about, and that's currently earning 2.4%. Last time I checked. So that's a steady, safe investment. We'll see how things go with the stock market the rest of this year. I'm going to go to an event that the foundation is putting on in May, an investors luncheon networking event, and I'll find out more about what's going on then, and maybe the government will be open and we'll have fewer trade wars. I don't know, but
Federal government.
federal government, right? Yeah.
Cities and counties are doing fine.
They are. They are. Thank goodness.
As are the special districts.
Yes, exactly.
Special district.
So, any questions on the endowment? Okay. So this is something I just wanted to discuss with you all a little bit. I brought this up at I think a governing board meeting in June about switching maybe to a 2-year budget cycle, and I just wanted to make sure that the boards are okay with this switch, and if you are, then we will proceed with a 2-year budget for review for our March budget workshop.
I think you brought that up to us before, and there was
Yeah.
consensus.
Okay.
That was a
Yeah.
reasonable thing to do.
Okay, great. I couldn't remember if, I knew I'd brought it up. I didn't remember if you had blessed it or not, so.
Our two teleconferencers, any problem with going to a 2-year budget cycle instead of one?
Okay by me, Semidian.
Thank you.
I'm the alternate, so I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay,
Any other committee members with concerns?
great.
Okay, so I think you've
Yeah.
got
I have a
it.
quick question, Ed.
Yes.
So does that mean the fees, when you want to adjust the fees, you'll adjust the fees every 2
Oh,
years as well?
no, the fees are an annual, so, yeah.
Anyway, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
But our revenue projections will be over a 2-year and our expenses.
Hey, we're doing.
Great, thank you.
We're doing 50-year projections.
And I promise you, I will not bring this up again,
Oh,
so. So this is old information. The next one, the advocacy update. I just wanted to bring this up for folks that may not have been aware of this since the last time we all met as a joint board was in June. So we held 2 state legislator visit days in September 10th and 17th. Don Rocha from the county parks was part of that, and we appreciated his involvement. And you can sort of see the diversity of folks that were involved. So we had folks from the parks and conservation groups that were there to kind of promote our region to our legislators and talk about all the good conservation and open space work that all these organizations are doing. We had a really good reception from the state, and we'll probably do this again in the future. For the federal, I'll be going on an advocacy trip. It's similar to the one I did last April. This year it's going to be in March 26th and 27th with other members of the National HCP Coalition. There'll be folks from Florida and Texas that will be attending. Defenders of Wildlife and TNC usually goes along with us. So we get a good diversity of bipartisan representatives from Texas and Florida, kind of rounding out the blue state liberals here in California. And if anybody is interested in maybe going on this trip, let me know, because I know I've been asked by the National Coalition to see if any electeds would like to attend.
Make sure and call ahead, see if they're open.
Yeah, I know, I know. Who knows when the end is in sight on this one? So just a quick permit integration update. We submitted our waste discharge requirement applications to both the Central Coast and San Francisco Bay Regional Boards. And that's basically to integrate their 401, Clean Water Act 401 process into our endangered species and Regional General Permit 18, which is through the Corps, kind of integrate all these things. So we're going to be submitting the application either, I think, early next week. I'm cautiously optimistic we'll get some sort of integration with them, but we'll wait and see. Speaking of shutdown, we are making great progress with NOAA Fisheries on the streamlined Section 7 consultation. And the biological assessment is complete. Submittal has been impacted by the government shutdown. So it's kind of, we were supposed to have a meeting last week with the NOAA staff to kind of finalize our biological opinion, but you know, one of many things affected. Grant update. So this is also was talked about in November, but I thought it'd be good to bring it up again with additional members. So I want to thank the Water District, $8 million, up to $8 million in D7 funding for the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency for land acquisitions. So $1 million of that grant amount was set aside. You know, 1 million of that 1.8 is reflected in our mid-year budget review. The other grants are $500,000 from the Water District for our Pacheco Creek stream restoration, with Jerry Haas from my staff will be speaking to you about. later for the implementation board meeting. And we also got another $147,000 from the state, also for Pacheco Creek. And we got 3 grants totaling $179,000 for scientific research. And then, so land acquisition system update, Clara Park enrollment and the reserve system, conservation easement negotiations are ongoing. Hopefully, we'll get that completed this year. I mentioned the UTC Shingle Valley one, and then the regional wastewater facility buffer lands, enrolling that into the reserve system.
Thank you.
Is expected later this year. It's being held up by the city of Santa Clara, because you know that's a joint facility, and they don't know who we are. They probably look at that easement that we have, and they're like, what the? So that city of San Jose staff has been bugging them about this, but that's the delay. We're also in various stages of negotiations and discussions with 7 other landowners. One deal is being spearheaded by Post and another by OSA, and the other 5 we're the leads on. And they're in various stages of discussions with landowners. We don't have enough money to get them all, but given how complicated the land market is around here, talking to as many as you can is kind of a shotgun strategy, and it's pretty good given a lot of these things fall through the cracks, given people change their mind. They have a very different idea of what we think it's worth, sometimes double. And ours is based on appraisals. Theirs is based on gut and thinking how the wind's blowing. So restoration update, I mentioned.
Can I do a follow-up
Yes,
question?
yes.
So, out of these 7 additional properties, you think any of them will come to fruition this 2019 calendar year?
So one, we have a purchases and sale agreement in with the Castle and Cook Corporation. It's got bogged down in their bureaucracy. I don't understand. They submitted a counter offer. We accepted it. I thought I would have been reporting to you on its successful acquisition last summer. Another property that I thought was going to happen, the landowner did not have any permits for the house he built on the site, so he needs to address that with the county before we acquire it. And a third one is the UTC. I see that happening. I'm going to be going to the Wildlife Conservation Board on Tuesday. The donation agreement is almost finished, so our back and forth with the UTC is just about done. I'm going to talk to the Wildlife Conservation Board about the donation agreement process and about what funding we would like from their organization and our Section 6 money to go towards this. So I see those as potentially happening this year. Yeah. I found this to be a very frustrating process, and I thought we would have more success by now.
That's okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Restoration update. San Felipe was completed, as I noted. You can see the acres restored and created on the site. Coyote Ponds, so this is on the Coyote Ridge site. Construction will begin this spring. Pacheco Creek, Jerry will be talking to you more about that in a minute. And Coyote Creek, which is a project being led by the Water District and the City of San Jose, and we would partner with those two. That's kind of just in its early stages of trying to figure out how we can help out. No, that's it. Thank you.
Well, unless there's objection or questions, I don't think we need a vote to receive the report. Is that true, Valerie? Okay, I didn't think so either. Seeing no questions, hearing no questions, and again, no one from the public here wishing to speak about any items on the agenda. We'll consider item number 4 received. Items 5 through 9 are on our consent calendar. Anybody wishing to pull any item for discussion? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve items 5 through 9.
Move to approve.
Motion made. Second.
You need governing board. It's governing
Oh,
board.
sorry.
Oh, this is governing board only. Thank you. So I'll second. Any discussion? None. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, we'd like,
Aye.
we would actually like a roll call vote because we have a couple of,
I was just going to
people
say,
doing
though,
that.
I think for governing board, because we have a quorum of governing board in the room, we're okay with a traditional vote, Valerie, or should we still do roll call?
are either members on teleconference on governing board?
No, they're both implementation.
They,
Oh, no, I'm
No,
I'm wrong.
Smithian is
I'm wrong.
governing board, not implementation.
I'm wrong.
okay, can we have a
Yes.
voice roll?
Wasserman?
Yeah, aye.
Lazat?
Lazat is on implementation.
I apologize. You guys, I'm a little bit rusty.
That's all right.
Tucker?
Yes.
Spring? Smidian? And
Aye.
Dieppe?
Aye.
Thank you.
That passes unanimously. That was items 5 through 9 on our consent calendar. Now move on to regular business, which is item number 10, selection of the 2019 Governing Board Chair and Vice Chair. Again, this is for the Governing Board. I'll be happy to continue, or I'll be happy to step aside if there's anybody else that wishes to be the chair.
I move to have you continue.
Actually, no, that's,
Unless
you're
you want
good?
to.
Who's governing board? Well, that's right. Implementation.
Board, yeah.
All right.
Again,
Unless
hearing-
Smithian wants it, no. He's gonna say no.
Not unless I can preside remotely.
chance. We have no other nominations. We have a motion.
Yes, please.
Okay. You want to be chair? No? No, I'm still. Okay. So we have a motion and a second for me to continue as chair. All in favor,
This is
say...
Smithian. I make the motion to have Mike Wasserman continue as chair.
Second.
There we go. We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we need a verbal roll call of governing board members only.
Wasserman?
Aye.
Spring? Tucker? Dieppe?
Aye.
Smidian?
Aye.
Now move on to vice chair, which is currently member Tucker. Unless anybody else wants it, I'll make a motion to nominate you again.
Second, says Smithian.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Okay.
Any further discussion among the governing board members? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Wasserman?
Aye.
Spring? Tucker?
Aye.
Dieppe?
Aye.
Smidian?
Aye.
Thank you all very, very much. Move on to item number 11, consideration and adoption of changes to the 2019-2020 Burrowing Owl Impact Fee Zones.
Yes, and this is for adoption of a resolution revising the fee zone. And as you know, we go through this every year, and it's based on 3 contiguous surveys, or 3 contiguous surveys, 3 years in a row. We do surveys for the owls, and if in the 4th year that, I guess we do 4, so it's sort of like a 4-year cycle of surveys, sorry. And if birds are not found in the subsequent surveys, then properties, breeding birds, properties fall out. And since I've taken this job in 2014, the area continues to shrink because the owls, the number of breeding owls, which are primarily in the north part of the county, the breeding populations are shrinking. So again, we had a shrinking in the number of properties, primarily in the city of San Jose, that are affected by this fee zone. So this year, 502 acres were removed from the fee zone. And as part of this process, we come to the board to pass a resolution to adopt the map and the fee zone. And I'd be glad to entertain any questions that you may have on that.
No, it's a shame those cute little critters just don't have any defense.
I know.
They just don't.
Right.
I-
I
Okay.
do have a question, though.
Yes,
Kind
question.
of a follow-up. So at some point, you'll, last year you gave us a kind of a nice PowerPoint presentation on the owls, and I think you had a consultant or someone do it.
Yes, we can do that again.
Yeah,
I'd be
this
glad
year
to do
sometime.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, I told him not to come this time.
Right.
Yeah, but I'd be glad to do that. And we're doing a lot of Tier 3 stuff now, which is captive rearing program with the Humane Society. We're doing supplemental feeding at Moffett and El Viso and Shoreline. We're going to start doing supplemental feeding at Don Edwards Wildlife Reserve. So these are things that I can have the team come here and present.
Update, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we can do it in March or June, either way, yeah.
I have a question.
That's-
Yeah, so a technical question, because if we are shrinking the area in the burrowing owl fee zone, how does it impact our fee per acre?
Oh, it doesn't change anything that way. It's still, yeah, the fee stays the same. It's just the number of properties that potentially could be impacted by it, yes. Mhm.
Thank you.
And if owls are discovered elsewhere, are lands ever added into the fee area?
We did add some where there's no development. Along 152, there were some owls found on the Wildlands Mitigation Bank, nesting there. So there is a fee zone, a very small one, that covers parts of the Pajaro River.
Gotcha.
Near, what's that, Fraser Road, yeah, Fraser Lake Road, sort of in that area, where part of the supplemental feeding is to do this experiment to see if overwintering birds will stay. And the first place we're doing it is in Shoreline, where there's an established population of birds in Mountain View. And if that's successful, then we're going to be more aggressive and try to see if we can keep birds that are in the Sierra Vista Park area, potentially Coyote Ridge area. And if wintering birds that are not from our area decide to stay here and start to breed, then yes, potentially the fee zone could expand. But those are in areas that are fairly remote and not a lot of development. But the good news would be there's more owls that are breeding, yeah, yeah.
All right, any other questions from committee members? Yes,
And
Dan?
I'm just curious. So when we did these surveys for 3 years, I should probably know this. Did we find owls that weren't breeding?
Yeah,
But that doesn't count, right?
yeah, it doesn't count.
Why doesn't it count?
It's just how it's written, yeah, because the wintering birds don't count either, the overwintering birds. It's only the ones that are breeding successfully. So usually they're colonial nesters to some degree. So there's birds, like there's, I think, I forget all the numbers, but like there's like 4 or 5 pair at the airport. There's 3 pair at Shoreline. There's, I think, 6 or 7 pair in the Moffett area. Not all those were successful, and sometimes one of their mates are killed, so then there just becomes a single bird left. So we only count the ones that are successful, but since they're usually, I know, we had some in Sunnyvale nesting that are now gone. They at one of the landfills, so they nested last year and they weren't there this year. But that didn't affect the fee zone because it was in the city of Sunnyvale. It was not part of the plan. So, but yes, part of the concern is the lack of success of breeding birds out at Warm Springs and at Moffett. Yep.
I guess I just wonder, because if they're there, then there must be value to the habitat. But if they're not breeding, then I guess it's not a value for conservation purposes or whatever.
Yeah, and part of it is to try to get reestablished with the captive rearing program, is to raise a certain percentage of the chicks captured in the wild, raise them at the Humane Society in San Mateo, then bring them back and release them here. And the program is that, well, we got to get the wildlife agencies to approve it first, but again, it'd be Shoreline would be the pilot. And then if that's successful, then expand it to OSA's Coyote Valley property. So then that would be establishing a new population on their property. And hopefully then that would lead to a more diverse population of the birds in different parts of the county. And then, we'll have to see how that all plays out. It's modeled after what they're doing in Alberta and British Columbia, so.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we need a motion to adopt the resolution revising the conservation fee zone map.
Second it.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I'll make a motion.
And I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Nope, we need a roll call vote of governing board members.
I'm sorry, I can't second it.
Oh, I'll make a motion. Do you make the motion? I'll second.
I can second it.
Okay, motion made, Renee seconded. Done. Now we need a roll call vote of governing board members.
Wasserman,
Aye.
Spring,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Dieppe,
Aye.
Semidion.
Aye.
Thank you all. We move on to our last agenda item under the governing board exclusivity here. Cost recovery fee for the regional government permit.
And Jerry Haas is going to give you a presentation
Welcome,
on
Jerry.
that.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jerry.
Nice to see you all.
Back at you.
So as Chairman Wasserman mentioned, this is a request for a resolution to adopt a fee increase for our regional general permit. It's a fee recovery cost, actually, as you can read in the staff report there, to expedite permitting for covered projects that impact federal waters. Our regional general permit streamlines processing and approval of 404 permits from the Army Corps of Engineers. We've had 2 projects, in fact, that have secured 404 approval from the Corps in under 45 days. And so I count the crowning achievements, I could rank the crowning achievements of my life: my marriage to my wife, birth of my son, and securing an RGP 404 permit approval in 45 days.
That's amazing.
That's good.
Some projects can take 60 to 80 days to complete, but that's still a lot better than going through the process independently. The $5,000 fee that we currently charge has been sufficient to offset staff costs to process and secure approval of these permits. But we don't have a program for reimbursement of past expenses that were generated through the obtaining the permit and managing the permit, and certainly nothing for future management of the permit, including reporting to the Corps. So Figure 1 in the staff report identifies the various expenses that have been incurred by the Habitat Agency in the development of the RGP, including the future expenses. The number of Habitat Plan projects permitted each year has remained consistent, about 55 to 60 projects that we see coming through the plan area by all of our partner agencies each year. And the consistency for the first 5 years is favorable for developing a forecast for the number of RGP applications that we anticipate processing each year. This is because the number of RGP applications we process will fluctuate, generally consistent with the number of general permits for development that we have throughout the plan area. So taking the past expenses to develop the RGP and adding the current and future reporting and management expenses yields a figure of approximately $750,000. If you divide that figure by the number of RGP applications we anticipate processing throughout the plan permit term, which is the next 45 years, results in a figure of approximately $4,750. So this fee is what we propose would be added to the existing Habitat Plan, RGP processing application fee.
Question, if I may.
Absolutely.
I see the costs that you're taking coming to the 750. I understand dividing by the 45 years, and I know we have a 50-year plan, and we've got 45 years left, and we have to do that, but every time I see estimating 45 years, I'm willing to bet with anybody our numbers will be wrong. But you take the 750 divided by 45. Is there a present value of dollars? Are you estimating today's costs going up? Because we're dividing by the 45 years. I'm trying to compare apples to apples here. What am I missing?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think we looked at this pretty simply, that all those fees that we had accrued up until this point, that's a static figure. Moving forward, if we didn't raise it up any longer, the fee itself is going to would remain consistent, we anticipate, through the permit term.
Yeah, if I may.
Please.
So we used funds that were, because it was an important priority for the co-permittees to, especially for the city of San Jose, from what I understood, and Mayor Reed at the time, to get the integration of the 404 process into the ESA, CISA process, the endangered species stuff. So we used monies that were collected from projects that paid fees for the implementation of the Habitat Conservation Plan and the Natural Communities Conservation Plan. So the state and federal processes that we're implementing. So the applicants who paid fees for those impacts to endangered species expect them to be spent on impacts to endangered species. So we essentially were robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we were spending money that was designated for endangered species work on trying to secure water permitting. So we have to come up with a way to recover those costs to be consistent with the nexus of fees being spent on the way those fees were intended to be spent. So that's what this is. So this is recovering expenses we already paid. That $5,000 number that Jerry spoke to at first, that's the one we have to look at over time. Are we collecting enough money?
To cover current costs.
Cover current costs, yeah. But this is to only reimburse us for costs we've incurred, yeah.
Okay, because
So,
$5,000 today is 70,000 45 years from now. So I just, as long as you're doing that, as long as
Yes.
you're doing that,
Yes.
looking at what our current costs are, I don't have any desire to bill any agency future value, that kind of thing, but it is appropriate that we have cost recovery.
Yeah.
So as long as you're doing that, and this 5,000 you said will cover the estimated cost to process.
Right, and it covers it currently, probably will cover it for the next several years, I would think.
Okay.
Most of them come in under that amount. There are a couple that have extended past it.
Maybe every 2 years with the budget, you evaluate to make sure you're still covering.
Very good idea. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I asked Jerry periodically, does he think it's enough? Because he's the one that processes the application.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's what Bob and Sally's work was all about too, making sure we're collecting enough money. And it's also fair to the applicants, are we charging them too much? Because some of the fees in Contra Costa actually went down, some went up, some went down. So I'm not sure what this 5-year review is going to tell us. Are we collecting enough? We're collecting too much. So this was a way to reimburse us. It's like the plan prep fee that we reimburse the co-permittees for all the money they spent to put the habitat plan together. This is kind of what this is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, we request that your board adopt this resolution to increase the RGP application to capture, application fee, to capture the accrued and perpetual costs associated with management of the regional general permit.
Thank you, Jerry. Any governing board member wish to make that motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. Any discussion among governing board members here at the dais or out in virtual, whatever, teleconferencing? Seeing none, roll call vote, please, of governing board members.
Wasserman?
Aye.
Spring?
Aye.
Tucker? Diep?
Aye.
Semidion?
Supervisor Semidion?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. We move on. Thank you very much, Jerry. Move on to the final governing board item only, which is future governing board initiated agenda items. Members Diep and Semidion, do you have any items you wish to be considered in the future at this time?
Not presently. Not today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Present governing board members. Seeing, Member Tucker.
I just want
Just
to
before I
follow
said
up on the
full.
one that I brought up last time, just put it on the future agenda. I had brought up disaster recovery in case of a fire or something. Not only, to me, it was also how to recover all the things and items that we had saved so far.
Yes.
And then a terrible disaster or tragedy come in, and then it's all gone.
Yeah,
So,
and
so I guess it's more two-pronged, right?
yes, yes. And also, I brought this up to to our insurance coverage, and Jill's
Oh,
looking into that.
okay.
So I took your your suggestion very seriously.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all.
And yeah, I'll try to put something together at a future board meeting.
It's not a rush, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
it's still on the to-do list.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, with that, without any objection, we will adjourn the governing board to March 21st, 2019, and I'll turn things over to Chair Lazat for the implementation board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Governing Board Member Simidian signing off.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for the courtesy. Councilmember Deeb will do the same?
No, we need you for the implementation board.
All right, I'll stick around.
Shouldn't be too much longer.
It's a real quick meeting. So we have the consent items, number 13 and 14, neither of which are resolutions, so I have a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion carries.
We need a roll call vote.
We do?
Yes.
There's no resolution? Okay.
Lazat,
Yes.
Hanakal,
Yes.
Conan,
Yes.
Wasserman,
Yes.
just make sure I'm calling the right folks. Tucker? Dieppe?
Aye.
Rocha?
Aye.
Spring?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes unanimously. Regular business, selection of 2019 Implementation Board Chair and Vice Chair.
Now. Now I nominate Linda Lazat to continue as the chair for
Well,
the
thank you.
implementation board.
I'm
And
shocked and honored.
I would like to second that motion.
I don't have a recommendation for a vice chair, though. Sorry.
Well, why don't we do chair, and then I have a suggestion for vice chair. So,
Okay.
all those in
Roll call.
roll call?
Lazat? Hanakal,
Yes.
Conan,
Yes.
Wasserman?
Aye.
Spring?
Aye.
Tucker?
Aye.
Rocha?
Aye.
Dieppe?
Aye.
And then, since I always like to do this when he's not here, I'm going to nominate Rich Constantine as vice chair.
I'll second it.
Traditions are good, so.
Yes. Yes. So, roll call, please.
Lazat?
Yes.
Hanakal,
Yes.
Conan,
Yes.
Wasserman?
Yes.
Spring?
Aye.
Tucker?
Aye.
Rocha?
Aye.
Dieppe?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is 16 Pacheco Creek Restoration Project Feasibility, Design, and Permitting Agreement with H.T. Harvey. Recommended action is to authorize the executive officer to execute a feasibility and design services agreement with H.T. Harvey in the amount not to exceed $967,761. Is there a presentation, I hope?
There is, and
There
and
is a
you.
presentation.
you get a double shot at Jerry.
Yeah,
Right,
hello
Jerry.
again, everybody. Nice to be back. Just make sure this is going to work. Okay, so thank you for noting the item that's for your consideration at this point. Before I go further, I want to point out that two quick revisions to the staff report, both of them related to financing. In the fiscal impact section, I noted that we would be receiving two grants, or that we have received two grants, have been approved two grants. We will be receiving two grants for future construction totaling $647,000. Just last week, we were able to convince CDFW to allow us to move their local assistance grant funding from construction into planning and design. So this project would actually be offset by nearly $150,000, the cost of it would be, through that grant. And we would still have the remaining $500,000 from the Water District grant to go toward future construction. I also mentioned in the fiscal impact section a little note about us needing to maybe move some money, $250,000 from land acquisition to conservation strategy implementation to cover the initial cost of construction up until we have our next year's budget. In fact, we actually have sufficient funds in our conservation strategy cost center to cover this expense, so no funds will have to be reallocated for this project if it's approved today. All good news as far as I'm concerned. So here's a vicinity map of Pacheco Creek Reserve. It's the area in red, you can see there. The site is about 1.5 miles east of the fire station on State Route 152 before you get to Pacheco Pass. The water flows from the reservoir, which you can see kind of right in the center, north part of the, yeah, it does work there. center north part of the picture, flows down through Pacheco Creek Reserve and then downstream to its confluence with the Pajaro River. This is the site proper. These parcels, both parcels were acquired from Caltrans in 2017. The reason the site is important for the Habitat Agency is that it includes several land cover types that are in short supply throughout the plan area. These are sites that are land cover types that we have to put into our reserve, or enroll in our reserve system. Our requirements to protect streams, riparian corridors, sycamore, alluvial woodland, all those are advanced with the purchase of this property. But just as important as the conservation is the restoration potential on this site to benefit our covered species, plants and animals. Here's an older image here. Although suitable habitat exists on the site, it has been impacted by a series of past actions, including drought, fires, flooding, irregular releases of water from Pacheco Dam. As mentioned in the staff report, the site was also mined for gravel through the 1980s. So in this image, you can see on the property there is a, well, just off of our property, but you can see a large pond here. The looks like the mining operations left tailings that exist here in this location of this pond, which is a man-made pond, and extended all the way kind of north and east of this property upstream, I believe, onto the adjacent property. From what we can tell, the mining activity changed the topography of the site and altered the stream's natural access to the high flow channel. So I kind of put some yellow arrows here to show you where historically the water would have come down on high flows. It would have departed from the primary channel and then headed out onto the open flood plain out here, and then it would have reconnected down here near Harbor Creek with Pacheco. So that's sort of a pressure release valve there, if you will. It sort of just takes a lot of that water and pushes it onto the floodplain. With less regular activation, so what we believe is happening is that the mining operations have prevented this from happening in the last 10 years or so, or 10 years or more. And it's led to, let's get into here, less activation of the high flow channel and more and heavier flows through the primary channel. The storms of 1917 were, or 2017, we'll go way back in time. Yeah, much. That was sort of the tipping point for us. If you look at the two images, you can kind of see where this north bank exists along the creek here, and in the next image, several feet were lost right along this bank. So without the flows being able to kind of be absorbed by this high flow channel, there's just more water coming down this way. And so it resulted in erosion. It's starting to affect some of our infrastructure. The area that's most significant for us was right here where our primary access to the site is. We also have a water well on that portion of the property, and there's some power lines that run through there. This infrastructure has been in place for decades. The water well, the power lines, our access drive could all be affected by the next storm. They may have already been affected maybe last night, for all I know.
Yeah.
So because we must address the protection of our on-site infrastructure, we also have an opportunity to benefit from, I'll call it the economy of scale, and we can direct some funding toward meaningful habitat restoration on the property. We don't truly know what potential exists to restore the property, so we decided to bring in the experts. A request for proposals was released in November of 2018, and we had a selection process in December. The RFP that we distributed specifically called out 2 phases for this project. The first phase would be a feasibility study looking into the hydrology, the biology, the geology, the topography, and all the other ologies, how they interact on the property. It will identify opportunities and constraints on the property and will inform potential projects which can address threats to infrastructure, correction of the modified hydrology that's out there, habitat enhancement, restoration, climate change, and future Pacheco Dam releases, and also the unknown unknowns. The RFP acknowledged that some work may be necessary on adjacent properties, and so you have a little map in your staff report there that shows the Bureau of Reclamation land that's directly to the south and the neighboring private property that's just upstream. We've already had preliminary discussions with those property owners, And both of them are willing to consider restoration on their properties as we move forward with our project. Phase 2 of the project will be design and permitting for whichever design options are selected. The completion of Phase 2 will result in a fully evaluated, designed plan set that is approved, permitted, and ready for construction bidding. We have had a total of 3 proposals that were submitted for this review. A panel of 4 reviewers selected the H.T. Harvey proposal. Their firm just completed a sycamore genetic study on this property, so they're familiar with the site. But what we particularly appreciated about them was their soft touch approach to restoration. Pop back up here to this screen. So to activate this high flow channel, H.T. Harvey is initially proposing to, instead of just digging this out, really, be a simple way to do it, they're proposing to slow down this primary channel by installing root wads and other natural features. This would encourage aggradation of the channel, and it will capture and store silt on that portion of the property.
And Jerry, what are root wads?
Oh, root wads are, it's a large tree that the top is cut off of, so it's got a long trunk with a root section on it. It's actually placed into the stream, so if the stream is heading in this direction, the root wads will be stuck into the ground this way with the root sticking out here and the stem or the trunk going into the earth on the banks. The water forces those further in, so it can't flip out and go downstream any further, but it slows the water down, it allows silt to settle into the stream bed, and it raises the level of the stream bed so that eventually it's going to just naturally activate the high flow channel more frequently.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So sort of allowing nature to assist us, basically, is what it is. So I'd like to note also that the H.T. Harvey proposal is conservative. It provides several options that we may or may not proceed with, and it also includes the cost of future construction oversight. That's all built into this contract. And there's a $150,000 discount. So before I turn it over to you for consideration, I do want to mention Pacheco Dam, because it will factor into our designs and constraints and analysis. Here's an image of the Pacheco Reservoir watershed. The reservoir was designed to hold, or it does only hold about half of the watershed volume, and that's because it's really not intended to hold back flood flows or sediment. It's really meant to sort of meter water out through the summer and fall months when there is no rain, to charge the groundwater aquifers further downstream to support agriculture. A sycamore alluvial woodland study that was just completed in 2017 by another famous Jerry found that the loss of sycamore trees from Pacheco Reservoir all the way down to Casa de Fruta was largely a side effect of a change in its water release regime. About 10 years ago or so, they started releasing heavier summer flows, but over a shorter duration and less frequently. So the dam is now under the control of the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and they've gone back to a schedule of consistent but smaller releases through the summer and fall to keep the aquifers charged. So preliminary discussions with Water District staff have confirmed that this will be the regime that's in place for the existing dam and also for the proposed dam expansion. This regime does benefit sycamores, and we've already seen some recruitment on the side of the sycamores that had died in previous years. So with Water District coordination, good planning, and restoration design factoring in the specific needs, we hope to see sycamore alluvial woodland regeneration on the site. So I'll finish this presentation with an image of a resident of Pacheco Creek Reserve. He's unnamed, but he has been caught on our wildlife cameras moving back and forth across the site. As stated in the staff report, we are recommending that your board authorize the executive officer to execute an agreement with H.T. Harvey for the feasibility, design, and permitting of a Pacheco Creek restoration project. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have some, but does anybody else?
Well, I have one question.
Go ahead, Ann.
So is the topography such that 152, the highway, is higher elevation? So when you block with the root wads, right? And the floodplain then goes off to the south or the east here. It's not going the 152 direction, right?
No, actually it wouldn't. There's,
Okay.
not only is 152 higher elevation than the creek, it's higher elevation than, if you can see the cursor here, than this bench of land that runs right along the highway. So, so that's your insurance right there.
Just checking.
Anyone else? Meenakshi?
I have a question about, you said y'all got a total of 4 proposals?
We had 3 proposals.
Okay, who were the other 2 firms? Is it,
We received one from Balance Hydrologics, I think it is. Hydrologics is how they say it. And then the other one was Flow West.
sorry, what was it?
Flow West.
Flow West.
We have an on-call list for restoration design. There's 8 firms on it. So we solicited all 8 to bid on the project. Only 3 chose to.
Bid on it,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a comment and then 2 questions. First, the comment is, I'm just so impressed by the amount of and timing of grants that you were able to secure. It's just, I mean, the Water District gives out grants, but we're also always chasing grants. And every time we come in here and there's a project that comes before us, the grants are already in place.
Yeah,
I just, I think that's fantastic. So
that's
whatever.
a credit to our new staff, Robin Glazer, who worked on securing those. And,
Please pass on.
she's not here, but I'll pass it on to
Yeah,
her.
please, please. In your report, when you talked about why you chose H.T. Harvey, one of the sentences that I just thought was really, and you sort of alluded to it, was that they believe in and stress the importance of assisting natural processes instead of overcoming them. I just think that mindset of how they're going to go about this is really, really, really important. And that kind of, said, okay, they're the ones to choose.
That's
So,
great to hear.
yeah.
I know it's very important to us. It was, that's the reason they ranked as high as they did. They just really, they didn't want to rush in and propose projects that would be big or elaborate. It was really, let's find out what's going on out there. Let's find out what's the least we can do to get the biggest benefit. So we anticipate that more work, more research, more time spent up front means the projects that come on the back end, the actual construction costs less and yields more benefits for the species.
Great. Now, my last thing is on page 192. It says a request for proposals released on November 7th, but then later it says the firms were invited to interview in October. Should that be December?
December. Oh, December 2015. Are you talking about that? So this is the bottom paragraph on page 192?
Requests for proposals were released on November 2018, and then a couple line.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. You caught the one typo there. Yeah, I actually sent out an email after we received some notification from some of the firms that date was actually the other date. It was you're right, it was the 28th.
December
Yes, December 28th.
2018.
Oh,
Oh, okay. 20. But then when were when were the interviews? It seems like you had interviews before the request for
Yeah,
proposals.
the dates are backwards.
Oh, the dates are backwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just want to,
Yes.
just the lawyer in me, I read everything, so. Anyway, okay, so do we have a motion to authorize the executive director to go ahead with this contract?
So moved.
A second, a motion and a second? All right, let's do a roll call, why not?
Bazat,
Yes,
Panikal,
Yes.
Conlon, Wasserman, Spring,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Rocha, Diep.
all right.
Aye.
Thank you and congratulations.
Oh,
Great
thank you,
job, let's
everyone.
get going.
Thank you. And just to let you know, we're hoping we're going to spend less than the 967, but it's there
Yeah,
to give us, before we don't have to come back to you with an amendment.
I'll come back and tell us if you get it done under budget.
Oh,
It's
yes.
always nice to
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely.
It's always nice to know. All right, so there's an opportunity for public comment. I think we've already established there are no public here to comment. Are there any future implementation board-initiated agenda items? Anybody, other than what Kat has asked for? All right, seeing that, we are adjourned until, what's the date? March 20,
March 21st.
March 21st. All right. All right, adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councilman Diep.